and welcome to the sixth episode of the Zildjian Talk. My name is Darshan Doshi, and as you know, we have a very special guest tonight with us. He's already in the house, and I'm super excited to have him on the show. This is the second edition of the Zildjian Talk, and thank you for such a great response. And especially for this episode, I think it's going to be was one of the most awaited episodes. And we've got so many messages and comments after the poster came out on Monday, and this is going to be an insane session. Like, I've got so many questions, and I hope I can ask Gavin everything. And as I said in my Instagram post today, that this drummer doesn't need any introduction, frankly. He's one of the most respected drummers around the world, one of my personal favorites. Everybody knows he's been part of the incredible rock bands Porcupine Tree, King Crimson, Pineapple Thief, and he's performed with so many artists across the globe like Iggy Pop, Level 42, Incognito, Nathan East, Dave Stewart, the list goes on. So yes, without wasting any more time, I'm going to invite the maestro, Gavin Harrison. Let's see if he's here.
Hey, Darshan.
Hi, Gavin.
How you doing?
Very good. Zildjian India are super excited, including myself. It's a big honor for us to have you on the show.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, sir. How have you been in the last, I know it's been a crazy year for all of us around the globe. How was the pandemic for you? And I'm sure you have your own home studio, and you must have done so many recordings that you've been doing for the last 25 years. But just tell us, how was the last 1 year for you?
The last year, I mean, it's been interesting because I don't think I've ever spent so much time at home since, I don't know, I was a teenager maybe. Certainly the longest it's ever been without me performing live. I can't remember a period this long. But it's given me time to catch up on a lot of sessions and a lot of projects that I've been working on. So it's been great, actually, to have the time dedicated in my video that I can practice, that I can work on projects. It's been quite welcome, because until the end, really toured in my life. You know, being of two active bands, the Pineapple Thief and King Crimson, the tours were kind of going one next to the other. So I was pretty exhausted by the end of 2019.
Amazing. So you've been with Zildjian for so many years. As we are here on the Zildjian India page, if you can talk us about your relation with Zildjian Cymbals, with the company, and if you can also give us a brief idea about your current setup and the cymbals that you've been using.
Of course, when I was a child, everyone's aware of Zildjian Cymbals. They're the most famous cymbal company in the world by a long way. And when I was a child, there were only really two cymbal companies, Paiste and Zildjian. And I really liked the Zildjian sound. A lot of my heroes played Zildjian. And I bought some Zildjian cymbals, in my early 20s. And then I think 1986, I started playing with Iggy Pop. And it was such a loud gig. It was so aggressive. I thought, I'm going to smash all my cymbals. So I contacted Ian Croft. He was the guy who was the UK representative of Zildjian back in the 80s. And I said to him, look, I know you've got this new series of cymbals. They're called Z or Z, as we said. They were just Z, and they were very heavy.
Okay.
And I said, I'm going to play with Iggy Pop. I'm doing a 10-week tour of America. And he said, okay, I'll lend you a set of these cymbals. So he lent me the cymbals, and they were perfect for that kind of music. And at the end of the 10 weeks, I went back to the office in London I gave him back the cymbals, and he said, well, look, you could just exchange them for some other cymbals. And I said, well, great. So I became an endorser 1986. So what's that? 35 years I've been playing Zildjian cymbals.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, you know, I think every drummer has in their mind an ideal drum sound, and along with that, an ideal cymbal sound. And I can find the sounds that I need, the sounds that I like, I can find them in the Zildjian range. And they've got so many cymbals. I think they've got, I don't know, maybe 500 different cymbals. And I've always been able to find a sound that I like and that I think is musical for the situation. So my cymbal setup kind of changes every year. You know, I try out new cymbals. I've been trying these new sweet crashes, sweet rides, sweet hi-hats. I do like the K cymbals. I've always been attracted to the K cymbals, even since the early 80s, and the Constantinople cymbals. So I've got a mixture. I mean, I normally have them all, you know, I've normally got 3 crashes and maybe 2 or 3 China cymbals, hi-hats and a ride, and the little bell cymbals.
Yes.
You know, the crashes, the rides, the hi-hats, they might all change, but they're kind of always in the same zone. I always try to pick the most musical cymbals. I don't really like industrial sounds. So personally, I don't do the stacking thing.
Yes.
I don't really do a lot of the effects things other than the little bells. I don't personally like the kind of white noise, industrial trash thing. There's nothing wrong with that. I just don't, it's not in my mind as an ideal sound when I'm making music. It's not one of the sounds that I think, oh, I need that industrial kind of hi-hat, crunchy, noisy thing. It's just not in my mind as a sound that I need. So I tend to stick with the more traditional sort of cymbals.
Right. Also, talking about the bells, like, you know, when did that happen? And when did you, was it like a prototype that you worked with Zildjian back in the days?
No, it was in the 90s. And, you know, I had a set of cup chimes by Paiste.
Yes.
And the thing I liked about them was I thought they were very musical. The thing I didn't like about them was there was too much pitch. I mean, every cymbal has got a pitch, but the thicker it becomes, the more it goes like a bell, and the more it starts to sound like a crotale, or where you can actually hear the note. Wow, that's an A sharp. Yeah. Oh, that's a B, you know, a C sharp or something. And then suddenly you can play the bells and everything's out of tune, everything's out of the chords, and it's horrible. So I had in my garage for many years some broken Zildjian cymbals. So I cut round those cymbals. As long as the bell was okay,
right.
But the bell wasn't broken, I could cut round them. So I made some approximated sounds that were approximately the same size as the cup chimes. And I thought they sounded so much better because they were thinner and they didn't have too much note. If they get too thin, then they become splashy. And that's not what I wanted. I wanted somewhere in the middle, because, you know, I use them all the time and I don't want to have to worry about, oh, that one is that one's a G and that one's an F sharp, so I mustn't play it during this chord or it will be horrible. And the same with the drums. My drums are in, you could think of my drums as no keyboard, but I don't worry about if the notes are going to fit the music. They're not so precise and clear a note that they become a issue with the music. So the bells became a thing that I just made. I made about 10 bells, and after a few years I showed them to Zildjian, And then they started to make me some little prototype sets. So I've actually got probably 40 or 50 of them somewhere.
Oh, wow. Oh, amazing. Also, when it comes to like the selection of your hi-hats and ride for a specific album, what are the qualities that you look out in, especially a ride and a pair of hi-hats?
Well, it depends on the music, but I mean, if it's jazz music, then I'm looking for a really nice, clear musical ride. And it depends how hard you're going to play it. You know, if you're going to play it with a nice, thin jazz stick and you're going to play it really quiet, then a cymbal that could be quite crashy might be perfect at low volume. But if you're going to play it really loud, then that cymbal's ride sound might not be perfect because it's going to get really crashy. And so it depends on the music. And quite often with rock music, the more important part is the bell of the ride and having the right sound of bell and the right, sometimes the bell is so loud, it's on all the microphones and you can't get rid of it.
True.
And I guess the same with the hi-hats. It depends on the music and it depends on the aggression level. You know, if you're really playing hard and you've got them half open, you're playing metal-based music, well, thin jazzy hi-hats are not going to be good. They're going to just be one continuous white noise. So you need to balance it a little bit. I think every drummer needs, you know, 2 or 3 ride cymbals because it's such an important part of your drum sound. And it depends on the band, it depends on the music, depends on the volume. So, you know, when I do sessions, I always think about the ride cymbal and the hi-hats. I might change them depending on, well, a lot of different things that I'm thinking about, the sound of the song and how loud I'm going to play. So I quite often change hi-hats and ride. I don't just have one ride that I can do every style of music on.
Right. But which would be your, like, the perfect pair of hats? Like if you had to pick one, like a series of hats that you would just, you know, close your eyes and like, I want that, like, you know, for every gig, what would that be?
That's really tough. I mean, I have an old pair of K Istanbul 1950s hi-hats, which I absolutely love, but I wouldn't take them on the road. I wouldn't play them with Porcupine Tree. I would destroy them. The K Light series are very nice. The Session series are very nice. The Sweet series are very nice. I've got a pair of Constantinople, some prototypes of the first Constantinople, and they're really nice. So yeah, I mean, on stage, sometimes I've even changed hi-hats for different songs. Back in the 90s, I used to play small, like 10-inch hi-hats on some songs, and then I'd just take them off and put the 14s back on. But you know, sometimes you just, if you're playing in a band, sometimes you just need an all-round kind of sound that's going to work for every song the whole night without changing that. It's easy in a session because you can stop. In a concert, it's more difficult to keep stopping and changing cymbals. But you know, guitar players change guitars every song, so why not?
Exactly. Yeah, I've seen a lot of drummers changing snares, like almost every second song they change snare drums and stuff. Like, why not cymbals then?
Why not?
That's amazing. So Gavin, before we talk about your, obviously all your bands and, you know, about all the drumming stuff, and there have been so many questions, you know, especially from drummers from India that have been, you know, waiting to ask you those questions. Tell us about your earlier influences, and I've also heard you're like a special relationship with Simon Phillips. If you can just give us some idea on that.
Yeah, I mean, I met Simon when I was about 8 or 9 years old. Simon used to play with his father's band, the Sid Phillips Orchestra. Now, where I'm living now is very close to where I grew up, 1 or 2 miles away from where I grew up. And Simon used to live with his mum and dad about 2 miles this way.
Okay.
So my dad was a trumpet player, and Sid Phillips would sometimes invite my dad to play in his band. Now, when I was young, if my dad saw an opportunity to bring me to a session or a rehearsal or a concert, you know, especially if it was, or early evening or something, then he would take me. And he took me to see Sid Phillips. They were playing in a park, and Simon was, I guess, about 13, 14. He's a bit older than me, and you know, I remember seeing him. I don't remember a lot of it. And I knew Simon when I was a kid. He used to come round to my parents' house with his parents. And sometimes he came in my little shed. I had a shed in the garden with my drum set in. And Simon used to come in there. And then I didn't see Simon for, I don't know, about 30, 35 years.
Wow.
And we met again on a Modern Drummer Festival. And I said, "Oh, Simon, do you remember me?" And he said, "Absolutely, I remember you. And I remember your dad. He was a fantastic trumpet player. I used to love it when he was in my dad's band." And yeah, we got on great. And then we had this opportunity to do a 20-minute duet, which you can find on YouTube. We did it for Guitar Center about 10 years ago. So in the space of 2 days, we composed and rehearsed a 20-minute piece, which is 4 5-minute sections. And then we went on stage and performed it, and it was filmed and recorded, and it was amazing. Yeah, I mean, Simon was an influence on me when I was young, when I was listening to Jeff Beck, There and Back. I loved that record with Simon's drumming on. And you know, other drummers I was listening to. I listened to a lot of Steve Gadd, a lot of Jeff Porcaro, Steve Schaefer, Steve Jansen, you know, and all the other guys that I heard, Billy Cobham and Bill Bruford and Stuart Copeland. All those guys stood out to me because they had their own sound and they had their own style. I could tell it was them in 1 second. There were lots of drummers who were very good, but they didn't stand out in that way. You know, they were good session players, but they didn't have a noticeably recognizable style, and they didn't have a recognizable drum sound that was their sound. But those guys did, and that kind of stuck with me, that I thought in later life I want to have a sound and a style that I think is something to do with my soul.
Amazing. Also, while you were growing up, you know, listening to albums, what is the first thing you listen to in a song when you put up a CD, and, you know, what is the first thing that you listen in an album?
Oh, the
in
groove.
A track?
I just want to hear the groove, whether it's swing or reggae or whatever. I'm looking for a nice feeling. Yes, sometimes it's not even coming from the drummer. Sometimes it's coming from the guitar player or the bass player, or hopefully all of the rhythm section just making a really nice feeling. And the second thing I hear is the drum sound. And so, you know, if you can have a good feel with a good sound, it goes such a long way. And this is nothing to do with trying to play impressive parts or trying to play technically fast or try to be recognized because of your technique. The first thing I hear is the groove and the sound. And even if the drummer or the female drummer, even if they don't play anything flash or strange, if they've got a nice sound and a nice groove, I'm going to enjoy it.
Right, right. You also spoke about the bass player, you know, how important is to play with a super tight bass player, you know, as I've heard you saying sometimes, you know, that they make you sound good.
Mm. Well, I've been lucky. I've played with a lot of very good bass players, but some of them you can feel a special relationship with. You know, before the days of clicks and metronomic time and Pro Tools and everything being perfect, it was very much the job of the drummer and the bass player to decide on the feel of the tempo, on the feel of the time. And you can hear it with some bands where they've had a lot of different drummers, like someone like Sting. He's played with a lot of different drummers. And when you hear when you hear Manu Katché or Omar Hakim or Vinny Colaiuta all play the same song, they all give it a different feel in the time. The time feels different. And sometimes you can find a bass player who feels time the same way you do. It's a very hard thing to quantify. It's a very hard thing to put into words. I mean, music is a hard thing to put into words. But sometimes the feeling that you can have with a bass player who's feeling the time with you is just something magical. Other times I've played with bass players who are very good, but we just couldn't agree where the time should go. And although it was fine, it just left me feeling like we never really kind of clicked together, you know. And that's true not only with the bass player, but with the guitar player, any rhythm player, whether it's keyboards or guitar or percussion. Sometimes you meet people who feel time the way you do, and maybe it's the records you listen to or the influences you had. I don't know. It's one of life's mysteries.
Right. We've got a lot of messages, especially from upcoming drummers, about your practice routine, especially back in the day when you were growing up and, you know, I'm sure practicing a lot of many hours. If you can give us, how did you break in like rudiments or concepts or certain formulas? How did you work while growing up?
Well, I had some lessons with a guy when I was 18. I had some lessons with a guy called Dave Cutler. Dave Cutler had just come back from Berklee School of Music. I would love to have gone to Berklee School of Music, but I didn't come from a rich family, and we could never have afforded to send me to America to do that. So my second best was having lessons with Dave Cutler, and he showed me some amazing, at the time, we're talking 1980, 41 years ago, he showed me some concepts of how to practice the Ted Reed syncopation book on my music stand. I still practice it now, but when I was in my mid-20s, I got really serious about practicing, and I thought I've really got to dedicate a lot more of my life to getting drums. So I used to rent a rehearsal room a week and I would do 3, 6, maybe 6.5, 7 hours a day. Wow. Building, because it was a local room, and the guy couldn't afford to just sit in the reception. He said, if you come here in the daytime, I'll just lock you in at 9:30, and then I'll come back at 5:30 and I'll unlock the door, because the local rehearsal room is only busy in the evenings. I mean, I could get out. There was a fire escape, and I used to go out to a cafe and get some lunch and come back. Right. So it wasn't like I was trapped. But actually, I really liked the solitude, and I really liked the focus, because back then I didn't have a mobile phone. There was no internet, no own in this building from 9:30 until 5:30, 5 days a week. I had my Porter studio. I had a video camera. I had lots and lots and lots of books, and I wrote lots of notes, and I just got as disciplined to try to improve. And when I would record myself a lot, and in the evening when I was at home, I would listen to the recordings, and on my Porter studio, I could slow the takedown. It had a speed control because this was cassette. So I would slow it right down. I would listen to myself playing to a click. I would listen to myself playing different exercises, and then that would inspire me to know what to do the next day. I mean, I had different books. I had Gary Chester, the Funkifying the Clave book. I had the Ted Reed book, and I actually never got bored. You would just think, I can't stand it anymore. But actually, it kind of built momentum. I never got so bored that I couldn't think what to play. So I was disciplined, and I did that it was when I wasn't working. Sometimes there were 2 or 3 months I'd just go every week for 2 or 3 months, and then I'd get a little tour or a few concerts, then I'd come back. So I kept it up for a few years, but you know, the first year I really did. I could feel myself improving. So if something's really, really, really important to you and you've got the time, you can dedicate your life to that one. I felt like I was doing the best thing I could do.
Right. I think we are having a little audio lag. I think your audio is coming to me slightly delayed, and your video is kind of going faster than that. So I think I hope you can hear me. I can hear you really well, and I hope people can hear it as well. I always wanted to know, like, sometimes, has there been a moment where you are playing on a live concert and you suddenly, play like a new fill or a groove to a song, and then you think, oh man, this sounds much better than, what you had maybe played on the original album. Does that happen?
Yeah, all the time. Normally, if anyone's followed Porcupine Tree, when the album comes out, and then at the end of the tour, we make a live album or a DVD, you can hear that the drums especially have evolved, because I've found better fills or better ways to go from one section to another, or a slightly different groove. Because when you record it, you don't have the chance to play it with the band many times. So
Right.
on tour, once you've played a song 100 times that didn't come in, so yeah, that happens all the time.
Awesome. Also, if you can, talk about your Inear mix, with Porcupine Tree and right now with Pineapple Thief, as everything is, time coded and synced with graphics as well, and I've heard that you have a kind of a unique way of recording some cues, with the click track. So how does that work out?
Yeah, I mean, with Pocket with a computer, because we had synchronized films projected behind us, so we are going through songs so that I wouldn't get lost during the song. And it's sometimes I can't do it in King Crimson. We don't play to a computer in King Crimson, so it's kind of good, but you've got to be careful, because if the computer crashes or the computer goes and only play with the cues, then you're in big trouble, because you don't really know the song. You don't know the length of every section. So you can have...
Right. There's also some questions from drummers out here in India. This one is from a very dear friend, Sambit Chatterjee, who's asked, when did you start seeing and hearing drums as a melody instrument and not just a percussive one?
Oh, I think right from the beginning, melodic patterns. I think when I got a drum set that had more than 2 toms, you know, my very first drum set I had, and for me, it's hard to think melodic when you've only got two tom sounds. Then I could think fills and ideas that would be more, yeah, more like I'm playing a marimba or a xylophone, and I liked element. Otherwise, you know, the old way to do it is to play everything
Yes.
from the snare drum, and your solos are all based around the snare drum. The cymbals and the toms are like just for accents. They don't really play little delicate melodies all around the toms, you know, and that was great. That was the way, you know, the older generation played. And I saw plenty of drummers play from a snare drum focal point. I just liked the idea that I could use the other drums as part of the rhythm and part of a melodic approach, rather than, you know, being focused on the snare drum. Because I'm not someone who grew up, I didn't do any kind of military snare drum corps, big rudiment sort of things. I'm not a snare drummer, really.
Right. Another similar question from a really incredible musician from India, John Paul. Your drum parts are very singable. How do you come up with these phrases? Do you improvise and it comes with flow, or you think in a particular way which makes such good singable drum phrases like Sound of Music?
Yeah, that's a good question. Sometimes it just comes to my, you know, it comes to my imagination. I can hear a drum part. When I hear the demo, I can imagine a drum part. Sometimes I improvise on the drums, you know, I record everything that I do back, and sometimes I hear one moment in the recording, I think, oh yeah, this was great. This one bar would be perfect for the verse. So I write it down, and then I try to play that rhythm through the verse. Sometimes I just improvise in different sections and see what happens. Sometimes it's easy, and sometimes it takes days and days until I think I've found the right part. I don't know where it comes from. It just develop. You can be very good at developing. When you have a little idea, you can develop the idea through, you know, technique, from experience. Okay, you make a little thing and you think, okay, I know how, I like that, so I know how to develop it from my experience of doing it. But where the thing comes from is the mystery, and you always wonder if you'll ever be able to do it again. Will it ever come back? You know, every writer worries that one day they'll sit there with their guitar or their keyboard, and just nothing comes. And maybe that's a good time to stop for a short period, or move on to another song, or move on to another brand.
Right. I hope that answers his question. There was another interview in where you had mentioned about your technique kind of going down while you were on tour with the tree, and how can a touring drummer, work on practicing and being able to, maintain the technique while being on tour? Because all of us, once the touring business starts, everybody's just back to back tours and stuff are happening. How do you maintain the quality and, keep pushing that game up and up every year?
I mean, the development happens not on tour. The development happens in the practice room.
Correct.
I mean, I can have good feeling and a feeling like my technique is on a good level, but I can't practice during the daytime. The crew is setting up all the equipment of the support band on stage. The support band need to do a sound check, or there is a special VIP thing happening. So, or they need to adjust the lights. You never get time to practice the drums on tour. And playing on a pad, the problem with playing on a pad is that you're not making a sound, right? Always making a sound. And that's part of your technique. The way that you hit the drum and the way you make the sound come out of the drum is a very special with the drumstick, with your technique, and the way that you strike the drum and the sound comes out. The problem with playing is you lose that part of your technique. You forget how to get a good sound from your sticks hitting the drum, because a practice pad just goes and an electronic pad goes doop 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 doop. So you're not consciously making the sound with your sticks, and that is something I need to do a lot. To maintain a good drum sound, you need to play the drums properly, because the sound is part of your technique. That's how you get the sound. It's not, I mean, you can buy great equipment. It doesn't mean you'll get a great sound. You're the person who makes the sound. The sound is in here and it's in your finger. So that is a very important part of the practice, is that you are playing the drums and you're reminding your limbs. And that's a problem to me when I'm on tour. I can't. Maybe I could bring another drum set and try and set it up backstage, but it would drive all the other guys crazy.
Right. Yeah. But I'm sure you have some kind of a practice routine just before going on stage. Anything specific?
Not really. I mean, I try to just play doubles and singles just to get my arms moving. I try to play unison with both sticks landing together. And I don't know, some things, I practice, something happens during a tour. I tend to practice the same thing on a tour, and then I never bother with that again. I don't know, some of flam, accent, paradiddle things just start happening, and I do that for a few weeks. But it's mostly, I'm just moving the muscles. It's not really, I'm working on any kind of idea, but I do need to warm up and I do need to stretch, a little bit before the show. Otherwise, I could start getting a pain or an injury, let's say.
Right, right. There's this question from Janko, who said, do you have a specific concept when it comes to learning new material and songs?
Well, it depends on the material. If the material's very difficult, then I'm going to need to write a chart. So I write out a chart, and then it's just repetition. If I have a track on my computer, I can play along, I can look at the chart. After 20 times, I can start to remember parts of the chart, or there's things inside the music which give me a good clue about what I'm meant to be playing or what's coming next. You start to learn bits of the music. Oh, when he sings this line, there's 2 bars and then there's the chorus. So I'm listening for that line. King Crimson music is very hard to learn, and it never repeats itself the same. With a lot of music, you know, you have a verse and a bridge and a chorus, and then a middle section, and then you have a verse and a bridge and a chorus or a double chorus, but it's always the same. Right. In King Crimson, when you think it's being repeated, it's always slightly different. So it's kind of hard to learn King Crimson music because it's never the same twice. And, you know, you're relying on your other bandmates to play their parts. If your other bandmates make a mistake, you can be completely lost, and then you're in big trouble. So normally I write the chart and I look at the chart for about 20, 30, 40 times, and then I realize I'm not looking at the chart anymore. Then I can put the chart away and I can play the song without a chart. If I'm in a band where we have a computer and I can cheat with a recording, a GPS sat-nav voice, well, then it's easier.
Right. A lot of questions have also been about, you know, there's always a debate about practicing on a metronome and, you know, also kind of doing it without one as well. What is your advice to upcoming drummers, especially when it comes to practicing on a metronome?
Yeah, I mean, now it's an absolute required skill. 40 years ago, we didn't play with metronomes. You know, you go on a gig, you never played a gig with a metronome. And in the early 80s, people were just starting to do recordings with metronomes. Now, you know, as a working, you have to be able to play with a metronome. I mean, there's a lot of things you can practice a metronome. Having the metronome go really slow, like 35 per slow clicks, where you have to make all the subdivisions and try not to speed up and slow down and keep it steady. Sometimes I put on a click really fast and I try to play in between that click, you know.
Right.
And I'm playing sometimes with 2 hands, so it's going da 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 da. It's important to practice and record yourself without a click. And what I do is I think of a song and I sing the song to myself, and I play the verse and I play the chorus and I play the bridge and I play that, you know, let's say 2 or 3 minutes. And then when I play it back, I play 16s on the hi-hat along with my recording, and I can feel if it's speeding up or slowing down or it's feeling good. Because if I can't play to it, how do you expect anyone else to play to it? So
wow. Yeah.
That's not really scientific. I'm not looking at it on a computer screen, looking at a millisecond. But if I can comfortably play 16s along with my live recorded drums without a click, if it feels comfortable just playing 16s to it, then I think, okay, if I was the guitar player or the bass player, this is good enough. I mean, if you put it into a computer and analyze it, then it will always be slightly speeding up or slightly slowing down. No
Right.
human plays kind of perfect time. And we've got used to perfect time in the last 40. You know, before that, people had a different concept about time, about feel.
Right.
matter if things sped up and slowed down. It was part of the song. It was part of the arrangement. And, you know, my dad, he was working in a nightclub in London in the 60s and 70s. And every month they had a guest, they had guest musicians. Well, they had a guest. It was like a Las Vegas style cabaret club. They would have 1 month Diana Ross, 1 month Stevie Wonder, 1 month Mel Torme,
Wow.
1 month Judy Garland, you know, all these incredible stars, and many of them would bring their own drummer or their own drummer, bass player. They'd bring their own rhythm section. But my dad was in the trumpet section, and so he had to play with a lot of different drummers, and he would always tell me, he'd say, oh, we got this drummer at the moment, and he's got the most fantastic feel. And sometimes he would take me to the nightclub, and I would stand at the back and watch this drummer, or maybe I would on a Monday afternoon, and just, my dad was always telling me that it was just about the drummer's time, and every drummer's got a different sense of time, especially when there's no clicks. A little bit, things could slow down a little bit, things could move, you know, it was much more fluid kind of thing. And it was much more about the song and the emotion, the tempo could move. But once early 80s, people started using drum machines, then every song just became flat of really playing like a drummer's time. And, you know, sometimes in King Crimson, we get chance to do that. There are some songs that we can just play free, and yeah, some nights it's a bit faster, some nights it's a bit slower, but it's enjoyable to play in kind of human time, because we're so conditioned in the last 40 years with metronomic time, which is computer generated. You know, it's not natural. There aren't any straight lines in nature. So we've learned to become robotic in a way.
True. I think that's the best answer we can get. I'm going to just take some questions from the people who have joined us out here. I think, you know, there have been more than thousands of people out here. This question is from Atmik, who says, do you decide each part of your solos, drum solos, or are they sometimes on the spot, like the chicken drum solo, I guess?
Well, the chicken drum solo was a hybrid, because I did work out roughly what I was going to play. I had an idea, because the pressure was, you can't imagine how much pressure it was to play 3.5 minutes with, I don't know how many millions of people watched that show live. Wow. The pressure was enormous. And I thought, well, I know from experience, when you're under pressure, your mind can do crazy things. You make mistakes you've never made before. You drop drumsticks you've never dropped drumsticks before. And if you're really going to try and improvise under that much pressure, well, your mind could go blank. So the chicken drum solo, I did have some ideas, but they weren't note for note ideas.
Right.
In King Crimson, I play a drum solo every night. And I truly try to improvise a new solo every night. That is the challenge. It doesn't matter if it's good, better, worse, as long as it's new. Right. And I think the audience can appreciate that. When you just play all of your, the things that you've worked out for years and years and years, all your favorite licks, when you just play those in a solo, I can tell that the drummer has played these licks 1,000,000 times. And it might impress some people in the audience who don't know anything about drumming, but King Crimson is a special band where the rules are all broken. You can break every rule in the world in King Crimson. And my personal challenge in King Crimson is to play a different solo every night. So I'm doing it for, and I'm doing it for the guys in the band, because if I played the same licks all the time, they would know that I'm playing the same licks all the time.
Right.
So
true.
That's a scary thing. It's a scary thing, and some have a little idea just before solo. I have a little idea what I'm going to do, and then when the solo starts, I play something.
This is one more question. I think we've got about 7 to 8 minutes left. I'm just going to ask you another couple of questions before we say goodbye. Thank you once again, Gavin, for such valuable time and all the advice that you've been giving. I'm sure it's going to help a lot of musicians, and there have been musicians not just from India, from across the globe who've joined us on this session today. Any good memories of your travel to India? Some years back.
Yeah, that was a crazy time. That was my first time. In fact, it's the only time we came to Mumbai to make a Porcupine Tree. I think it was 2009, maybe. And it was just before Christmas. And I've never seen so many people in a concert. It was crazy. I mean, I've got some Indian friends, and, they told me a lot of things, the kind of, the lifestyle in India is a very different lifestyle that we have in the UK.
Yes.
And, there's a kind of chaos, but it's kind of organized. Going down the road, and there's a cow in the middle of the road. The traffic just goes round it. If everyone would stop, we'd call the police, they'd bring a helicopter, they'd lift the cow. In India, they just go round it. And if the road's blocked, you just go on the other side of the road. And
that's it.
So it was very funny and a very enjoyable time. The concert was amazing. It was very, very hot. I can't remember how many people were there. It looked like thousands. And the audience were absolutely fantastic. They sung along every song, and they made us feel so welcome. It was a really, really nice experience. I hope we can do it again someday.
Yes, I think it was at the IIT, Mumbai IIT, if I'm not wrong. And you have, obviously the band has an incredible fan following, and there have been a lot of questions about will there be any days coming up where we'll see Porcupine Tree back again?
I knew someone would ask that question. We haven't split up, and we haven't given up on the idea. So I can't really say yes or no, but it's still an idea. Yeah.
Awesome. Once again, Gavin, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure and an honor to talk with you and to have you on this show. A big thank you from Zildjian India and all your fans from India. We are really waiting for have you soon, some maybe years down the line now, because I don't know when these things are gonna open up, especially for touring all across the globe. So wish you all the best for all your projects, and thank you once again for joining for this interview.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thanks, Darshan.
Thank you, Gavin. Thank you everyone for joining in. Please you can again see this interview on the Zildjian India Instagram page, and I will see you guys back next Sunday with another guest from somewhere around the globe. So see you guys. Thank you, Gavin. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.